I live in a city with a public transportation system. They've been extremely short-staffed, and more often than not, you have to call to make sure your bus is even coming. On weekdays during business hours, the public transit operator will order a lift for you to get to work if your bus isn't showing up, or if they happen to be short a driver. So Tuesday, I'm at the bus stop after checking multiple times to see if my bus is coming, only to find out that it was not. They ordered me a lift, and this nice, older gentleman was my driver. We had a very casual conversation before he started to ask me personal questions. I'm a bartender, and I'm super friendly already, so I didn't really think his questions would be ill-intentioned. Told him I'm not married and that I'm pretty much a loner. I basically go to work and go home to spend time with my family, and that's about it. He then leans over and says to me, "I'd marry you in a heartbeat." Again, I'm just thinking he's being funny or perhaps just being nice. I asked him to drop me off at the downtown grocery so I could pick up some things I needed for work. When we finally stopped, he said he was joking and that he's married and had a son my age. Asked if I was interested in maybe meeting him. Since I have a terrible track record, I figured it wouldn't hurt meeting someone out of my circle and comfort zone. So I gave the man my number and we parted ways. The next morning he texts me and asks if I need a ride for work. I told him he didn't have to do that, and I was sure my bus was running today. He said it would be his pleasure though, and he'd pick me up at my house at around 3 p.m. An hour later, he asked if I wanted to have lunch with him before work. I told him I was busy and that I couldn't do that. He said, "Okay, see you at 3. He showed up and let me know he was outside. While I was finishing getting my things together, I opened the door and he starts to walk up my stairs to my house. I told him I was ready and we could head downtown. When I get in the back seat, he turns around and tells me that actually he has a confession to make. He told me from the time I took off my mask, his heart danced like a butterfly. He said that he hadn't been able to stop thinking about me since the day before and that he'd love to spend time with me. He'd even pay me to spend a day with him. And that's when I started to feel super uncomfortable. The whole ride was making me cringe, but I know when you're in a situation like that with a predator, playing nice is a whole lot safer than freaking out. He continued on the entire ride about how he loved me at first sight and wanted to make me his Lebanese queen. As we got closer to downtown, I started to feel some relief. He dropped me off at my hotel and said, "See you tomorrow." That evening at work, I checked my phone after a busy happy hour. He had texted me a couple of times. He sent a picture of the hotel and said he'd wait for me to give me a ride home. I told him I already had a ride. Thursday morning, I'm out running some errands with my mom and sister. He texts me and asks how early he can pick me up because he just can't stop thinking about me. I asked him to please stop and told him that I was with family. He continued to text me all day and evening, begging to see me, telling me his heart is aching to see his Lebanese queen. I just kept telling him to please stop. Friday morning is when shit completely hit the fan. He tells me he loves me no matter what. He said, "I told my wife about you and that I'm in love with you. I told her I want a divorce." I told him, please don't do that. It wasn't right to treat his wife that way. Then he said, "I'm picking you up at 5:30, and I'm not taking no for an answer." I ignored the messages during the day and just went about my off day. About 5:25, my video doorbell rings, and there he is standing on my porch for at least 15 minutes. I told him I wasn't home and that he should leave. He continued to text me though and begged to come pick me up from my parents. I eventually called the non-emergency police station, but he had already left by the time I got through. I filed a general report, but technically they can't do anything unless he's standing on my porch directly threatening me. They advised me to report it through Lyft though, so I did. I haven't heard anything since, but that shit was creepy as fuck. Okay, so I'm not conventionally pretty or classically pretty. I'm the Duffy in any friend group I'm in. I never worry about being hit on, disrespected, or kidnapped. I never had to worry about my own safety when going out either, as I was never the one anyone wanted to get to know or be around. I'm just so plain, and it's always me that has to be on the lookout for my friends, male and female alike. Now, I like to go to a local bar almost daily. I don't drink alcohol there. I just get a normal Coke and wait for my ride home. It's my usual hangout spot after work, so I like to just sit and chill and mind my own business. Well, a few weeks ago, I had just gotten off work and was chilling at my usual spot and sipping on my drink while working on a new pendant I was making. I started wire wrapping crystals into jewelry. I didn't think anyone would try and talk to me, since I knew I basically blended right into the walls, even though the staff know me and pay me slight attention and are nice to me. Suddenly though, this weird guy I'd never seen before came over and sat at my table right across from me. I was very surprised and looked up at him, struck up a small conversation that I can't even remember how it started, but he started to ask me a few questions about myself that I thought were totally normal. It all flowed together, so I didn't think too much of it. Again, I'm very plain and didn't think anyone would want to do anything to me. I drank 3 glasses of soda by then and had to use the restroom, so I grabbed my phone and purse and went to the bathroom. I may not have been worried about being abducted, but that didn't mean I didn't need to worry about my identity, cash, and contacts though. I went back a few minutes later and went back to working, since none of my stuff had been touched. I called the waitress over and asked her for a new drink. She nodded, as it had always been ingrained in me that you never leave your drink unattended. If you do, just have it remade, or leave it to the bartender. As she was going to grab for my old drink, which I had only taken a few sips out of, the guy got immediately irate at me, saying I was being wasteful for just ordering a new drink. I looked at him with a raised eyebrow in confusion. I asked him why it was any of his business if I did or not. It was my money after all, and the refills were free. He then said I was making more work for the waitress for no reason. This really annoyed me, and I told him again it was my business, and if he didn't like that he could always leave. He then tried to wave the waitress off with letting her change my drink, but I'd had enough of his nonsense. Fine then, you drink it if you think it's such a waste. This seemed to have caught him off guard. He looked shocked and then got angry, before standing up and stomping away. I looked at the drink and handed it to the waitress. I told her that something didn't feel right about that guy that I was just talking to. If she could tell the bartender to keep an eye on him and dump out my drink and bring me water from then on, that would be just great. I left for home after being picked up shortly after and found out the next day after work that he had been arrested for assault. I didn't find out till today exactly what happened. Apparently he had gotten into a fight with the bartender working that night. The bartender had caught him putting something into a girl's drink when she wasn't looking, and he stopped her from drinking it. The guy got mad and immediately escalated into a whole fight. The cops were called and now he's awaiting trial. Apparently he was trying to see if he could get someone like me, who always had her guard down for herself because her confidence was low. He thought I'd be an easy mark with just a little attention. But when I didn't just drink my drink when I came back, he figured he had to try on another girl. If he really was targeting me, I have to question his sanity and sobriety. Thank goodness for those old lessons about safety growing up. When I was much younger, I used to go out and party almost every single night. I couldn't stand staying at home, so being out on the town felt really good, especially with friends. We would go bar hopping, and one of the pubs that we frequented was called Poppin'. We would get wasted, as the alcohol here is dirt cheap, due to the island being duty-free. Imagine being teenagers and being wasted most of the time. Not exactly a good combination, and bad things are bound to happen. I grew up on this island, and I know many of the townsfolk here. It's a relatively safe place to be, since it is just a small island. You could literally leave your car doors unlocked and no one would steal your car. Hence, there's also nowhere to run, and the only way out of the island is either by flight, speedboat, or ro-ro ferry. So, back to the story. I was out one night with my buddies as usual, having some drinks at a local pub. We were having a great time listening to the live band that was playing there. It was crowded inside, and people were drinking and dancing. Me and my friends were too. My friend's name is Steve. See, Steve and I were close, and I knew him since he was in high school. At the time, I was in my early 20s. We were really good friends. While we were in the pub, suddenly he called me to go outside and accompany him to go and see someone. Curiously, I followed him outside. When I asked him what was going on, he just told me to back him up, and that the guy we were gonna meet was apparently dating Steve's younger sister. Steve didn't like that one bit, since his sister was still in high school. So, when the guy came, Steve warned him not to disturb his sister again and to stay away from her, which I thought was a fair stipulation. Me being the hero wannabe, I butted in and started telling him the same thing. He wasn't taking it one bit from me though, and got really pissed instead. He said that I was going to regret opening my mouth, and just walked off. We went back inside and I started calling up friends, telling them that a fight was going to go down, as I knew that guy was going to call his buds as well. About 15 minutes passed by. I got called out. This guy had brought about 15 to 20 guys, and they surrounded me and Steve. The guy's uncle pulled me aside and slapped me, saying that I was a dead man. I tried to fight back, but then he did something that really shook me up. He brandished an army knife from his back jeans. The kind that has those teeth-like textures at the back end of the blade. The kind that could literally be used to pull your guts inside out. Yeah, it was that kind of knife. I froze and didn't know what to do, as he was holding onto my t-shirt with one hand and had a knife in the other. I immediately thought to myself, oh shit, I'm gonna get stabbed and killed tonight. So much was racing through my mind, I couldn't think. According to Steve, almost all of these guys had weapons on them. One of them that didn't even broke a beer bottle and was holding up sharp broken glass, ready to harm us. Out of nowhere, my brother-in-law came screaming in, saying that he was a cop and that backup was coming if they didn't settle it there and then. My brother-in-law is quite a big guy as well and stands at almost 6 feet tall, so I knew that they believed he really was a cop. Thankfully, they started to settle down. The guy that was dating Steve's sister still wasn't satisfied though, and wanted to fight me one-on-one. At first I denied him, but after he kept asking, I just agreed. Luckily though, he changed his mind, and just settled with a firm handshake. He told me not to go after his uncle, and really wanted to settle. I agreed since this was such a small island, and you would never know if you would meet the same person twice. I went home after that, as I'd had quite about enough for the night. That incident shook the alcohol right out of me and sobered me up right away. I still saw that guy and his knife-wielding uncle a couple more times when I was out in town, but we always just nodded to each other and never had problems with one another since. But that's my story of the time I almost got stabbed and probably killed by some random guy's uncle just for butting into their conversation, which really was none of my business in the first place. And that's also the reason why I no longer favor going out to drink till you can't think straight. It's better to stick to herbs instead, and maybe just chill at home. This may well be the worst way to tell your parents you're gay. Do not recommend. My sophomore year of high school, I was on the cast and costume crew for our fall play. One of my castmates/crewmates was a really cute guy. His name was Mark. He always wore skinny jeans. I learned from a mutual friend that he was bisexual, so I started flirting with him, looking for opportunities to hang out, sending him memes, everything a closeted nerd would do. After 3 months of flirting, hanging out, and gradually growing more affectionate, I asked him out on the last day of our play, and he said yes. The issue? My mother is a very conservative Christian, and although she was tolerant of gay people, I knew she'd never allow me to have a boyfriend while I lived with her. Side note, I had 4. So we had to hide our relationship, which early on was not too bad. We'd go to the movies or his house and just hang out. But everything started going downhill the first time we had sex. He started getting really demanding about hanging out. And by demanding about hanging out, I mean he was never not horny and extremely frustrated. I was cool with it at first cause, well, sex. But after a while, I was starting to get pissed off about it. Working a relationship around my mom was already difficult enough, and my generally asocial nature was not at all enjoying having to leave the house so often. I tried to talk to Mark about it. He seemed understanding, for like a week. Then he started getting extremely nasty. He'd avoid me at school, only to text and insult me, and act insanely jealous of my friends. Eventually though, I dumped him in July, after just 9 months, over text as well, while I was away in Florida. Look, I was 16, fuck you. Anyway, he completely lost it. He blew up my phone daily for a week. Then he started acting normal, like we were best friends. That lasted another month. We got back to school, my junior year, his senior. Unfortunately, while we were still dating, we had tried to coordinate our schedules, so now we had 4 out of 7 classes together. For a while at first, he seemed okay. Then though, he started staring at me. Then the texting started again. Sad messages. I figured he was done being a dick and started being nice to him again. Big ass mistake. He started getting attached again extremely quickly. He would try to integrate himself every time I went out with my friends. He would beg me to take him back. I would say no and explain again and again why we couldn't be together. Around October, he started getting real bad. Like 1 a.m. texts about swallowing a whole bottle of melatonin bad. In hindsight, I should have gone to the authorities, but I was terrified that doing so would lead to my mom finding out. So I tried to handle it myself. Bad idea. He got worse. He threatened to kill himself regularly and tried to turn my friends against me. The worst day thus far came when we were building our homecoming float for drama club. I was hanging out and casually flirt bantering with 2 of my male friends, Isaac and Caleb, who are both straight. Mark saw this, stood up from where he'd been painting, and walked out in a hurry. A few minutes later, a freshman girl walked in, asking me where Mark was going. He said I'd know. I found out later he'd driven himself to the ER to get counseling. I was happy, thinking he'd finally get himself some help, but I had no damn clue how obsessive he was. I came home from rehearsal one day to find his car parked up my street and Mark walking towards it from my house. My mom was out on the porch waving goodbye to him. She thought we were just friends and loved him quite a lot. Apparently he'd been in the neighborhood and decided to drop by. For some more background, I'm the eldest of 7 boys. My youngest brothers were 2 years old and 6 months in the womb during this. My mom raised us primarily by herself. Dad's a dirtbag, stepdad was deployed throughout this whole ordeal. She's an honest 6 feet tall, about half that wide, and can easily sling me across her shoulders. I'm 6'3" and 180 pounds. She's also the best shot with a pistol I've ever seen. Not someone Mark would want to tangle with, even while she was heavily pregnant. I told her we did hang out, just not as much lately. She accepted this and we went about our days. For a week or so, everything was okay. And then I came home from rehearsal one night. Mark's car was parked up the street again, and he was sitting on our porch with my mother, who had my baby brother on her lap. She saw me get out of the car and gave me a come hither crook of the finger. Slowly, I walked up to the porch. It turned out Mark had told her everything. Everything. our whole relationship, but with me as the abuser and himself as the victim. She started to lay into me, then dismissed Mark, who had gone back to his car, snickering. After she was done ranting, I calmly told her my side of the story. Fortunately, she believed me, but she was still pissed that I'd lied to her, so I was grounded. This pales in comparison to what happened that night, though. Our house is quite old and crappy. The windows can easily be jiggered open from the outside, even when they're locked. Mark knew this, since I'd used it to my advantage many times when sneaking out. My mom's room, where she and my 2-year-old brother sleep, is right across the hall from mine, facing the backyard. Mine faces the street. That night, I woke up at around 2 a.m. because I was suddenly cold. I put on my glasses, and immediately I saw why. My window was wide open. I whipped around, searching for whoever did it. My bedroom door was open too. As I got up, I heard the sound of my mom's bedroom door quietly closing. I raced as quietly as possible to the door, and I heard something that stopped my heart. A metal click, like a gun being cocked. I flew across the hall and threw my mom's door open. The lights were on. Mark was crouched in the corner, a cleaver in his hand, and my brother was sound asleep. My mom was calmly sitting up in bed, glasses on, Harry Potter book in her lap, 10mm pistol in her hands, pointed directly at Mark, who was shaking and sobbing. She told him to shut up before he woke up the baby, and directed me to call the cops so she could keep an eye on him. Mark was taken into custody, but my mom declined to press charges, on the condition that Mark move out to Arizona with his dad, instead of staying in Missouri with his mom. He did, and from then on I hardly saw him, unless he was Snapchatting my friends begging to talk to me. You know, standard stalker shit. What is up, guys? Blue Spooky here as always. Thank you guys so much for watching, especially if you made it this far to the end of the video. If you guys enjoyed the content of this video, please be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe if you feel so inclined. If you do decide you like my content enough to subscribe, please be sure to hit the bell button right next to the subscribe button and turn notifications to all so you can be notified of every video I post in the future. If you don't feel like doing that though, I post a video nearly every day, so you can just come back every now and then and check up on what you missed. If you guys have any criticisms on what I can do better or any feedback on the stories in the video, please be sure to leave them in the comments below, as I always enjoy reading all the comments and I try to give them hearts and respond when I can. If you guys would like to reach me for any reason, or you would like to send in a story to be read, you can go ahead and take a look in the description below the video. You'll find a link to all of my social media, including my Facebook, Gmail, and Twitter accounts. Go ahead and send me a message on any of those, and I'll try to get back to you as soon as possible. If you do decide to send in a story, please be sure to include in the tagline what the name of the story is if it has one, what type of story it is if it has a theme, and how you would like to be credited in the description of the video the story appears in. Last but not least, I also run 2 other channels, Mr. Blue Skies and Darkest Hour, where I do true crime videos and dark documentaries respectively. If that kind of content sounds interesting to you, why not go ahead and check it out and see if it is for you. Aside from that though, guys, I think that's pretty much it for now, so thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you guys have a great day.